Yeah, similar sort of criticism. I think it's about missing some logical steps in the argument. So universities, schools, etc., they talk about being non-judgmental and so on. In schools' case, it's an absolute lie, because of course children in schools are judged, hyper-judged. From the age of 4, you're put on a table and streamed. You know, and kids know that the giraffes mean that's the clever kids, and the elephants are the less clever kids. So children are hyper-judged, and that's part of the moral climate that we live in. And I think that there's an element of trying to mask that moral climate by talking about being non-judgmental. But that moral climate also has an effect on children and young people coming into university, and affects the way, and I think I've seen it, affects the way that you're able to deal with judgment. So I think we're in a bit of a bind. So I think there's a bit more complexity going on in terms of the non-judgmental culture. And I think we need to sort of think about all the, how do we get out of this bind, as well as just saying this is wrong and this is bad and we should be more judgmental. Obviously you need to make that argument, I agree with you, you need to make that argument, you need to make the case for it. But you also need to take people with you, you need to take young people with you. And you know, trying to get people used to it, on what judging means and what criticism might mean, and in a way that doesn't destroy people's sense of autonomy, I suppose, and robustness, you know, and so on. So I think that's part of it. I mean, I was here at the debate at Goldsmiths when the Socialist Workers' Party was banned, it was a very judgmental atmosphere, but that's fine. I think that's fine. But you have to take on board the fact that young people feel there's issues about rape and so on very viscerally. You know, it's part of a young person's psyche, and so I just think there's a bit more complexity going on. I mean, I was against that. I was virtually the only person in the room that was able to talk about that. For the fact, because I was of a certain age and I was able to talk about that calmly. You know, these are quite difficult issues, I think. They're difficult issues to talk about.
I agree, and know that I'm being a little bit simple as my way of expressing myself, but I agree with you. I agree with you that it's impossible not to judge, and we're judging all the time, but we do it dishonestly, and therefore the kind of dishonest judgment that you're talking about in schools is not what I call judgment, because what it is basically that kind of judgment simply implies categorizing people in particular kinds of ways. And the way that I'm talking about judgment is basically not in order to, because I use the word destroy and various other things as a close link with judgment. We judge people and we judge ideals not because we want to hate or because we want to destroy them, because actually we are looking for a common ground in order to agree, because it is through judgment that we have, the only chance that we have of ever gaining a common ground about what it is that we all sign up for, what is it that kind of binds us together, is through statements of judgments. And to me, one of the important points that even Mill makes about judgment that I think is really quite important is that it's only when your opinions have been judged, and you've judged other people's opinions, that you can get away from simply living off a diet of received truths. It's not, because you've been challenged and because your ideals have been put to the test, you've been forced to defend and argue them. It's only under those circumstances that we actually have real understanding about what we think, we believe in, rather than just simply repeat a dogma that's been handed down to us. So for me, judgment is a very creative thing. It's not about destroying or hurting people or being insensitive. It is to me a way of transcending our immediate limitations, intellectual and moral limitations, to gain a much broader, societal-wide insight into the things that we're engaged with. And it seems to me that the reason why university students behaved they did when they came to Goldsmiths isn't because they're any worse than any other generation. They're just like any other generation was in the past. It's precisely because they've gone through an education system where they've been socialized into an outlook and a way of life where being judged was seen as akin to almost like a form of bullying, and where their capacity to deal with those kinds of challenges, which you call visceral, which you're going to have a whole of our life, visceral reactions are not going to go away when you leave university, I'm afraid. It's precisely because of the difficulty having handling that you do end up with these very illiberal forms of behavior where you ban a society. I mean, I don't like the SWP, but the idea of banning them, I would think is just, where I come from as a 1960s person, is unthinkable. You just simply wouldn't do something like that and live with yourself.